Hey, 7-Minute Story listener, you're about to listen to a conversation on 7MS Presents the Storytelling University that I had with Evan Bartels. Now, Evan is one of the best songwriters out there. The short of it is, I have a friend, Rob. He's a collaborator. He's a wonderful award-winning editor and director. We were working on some projects, and he was working with Evan's team on some projects. I got in touch with Evan and started listening to his music almost 6 months ago. I listened to his new EP titled To Make You Cry. I put the link where you can listen to it as well in the description, and I fell in love with this music. Evan is one of the best songwriters out there, bar none. It's incredible. And really, it is happy tears and sad tears when you listen to this music because it's done just right and it's done from the heart and soul. Before you listen to his music and that whole album, do me a favor, lean into this conversation, because sometimes it's great when you listen to a songwriter or a storyteller give you their philosophy on why they write and how they write. That's what you're about to hear right now, a meditative conversation between me and Evan Bartels. I hope you enjoy. So these are just the first 5 lines of Montana. She used to watch him roll his cigarettes on the front porch wearing her Sunday best. Ain't been to church in 15 years. Miracles still happen. They don't happen here. Done. I'm in. It's over, bro. It sets up the whole damn song of why she's going to do what she does. How do you even begin to write a song like that, man?
I think that writing a song like that or any song or story-based form of, art or dialogue, I think that really comes initially from noticing things, just seeing things and being in the world and experiencing and allowing yourself to think and feel. Because if you do that long enough, it affects you in a way where, it's just like if you have an empty glass and you start filling it with something, eventually it will overflow, right? And so, look at this cup, for example. Half full, half empty, whatever you want to say. But say that was an empty glass and you fill it full of water. That water is your life. It's your day-to-day experience. Now, whether you're living life on the road, whether you're going to a grocery store, kind of have a more mundane, stereotypical existence, there are things happening. That water is going into that glass.
Yes, sir.
And there reaches a point where it will spill out the top. And then you have two choices. Do you want to clean it up and go, oops, and forget about it? Or do you want to, look at that spill? And that might not be the best metaphor, but for me, a lot of times, the story or the song, it's the water that comes out of an overflowing cup. It's just things that you notice that maybe initially would be something that you would pass by or glance over or make yourself forget about. If you notice them, the songs and the stories, they're already there. There's this kind of innate human quality to storytelling that everybody has. I would agree with that, because even if somebody doesn't consider themselves an artist or a writer or what have you, there's an element to storytelling just in the way that you live your life. And you can choose to be an active participant or a passive participant. The truth is, though, that there is a through line for everybody who has ever existed, that their life is a story. It contributes to the story. And I think things like that are worth noticing.
Did you always write stories in that way, like sketches from the observations we've been leaning into here, where you look at a moment that can be easily passed over and it's something that hits you, or it's a combination of characters? Are you a write first artist, or are you a music first artist with the guitar?
You're kind of talking about two different things, right? There's the art and then there's the craft, where the way that I would separate the two is, like you said, the art is in the noticing. It's in the catching the story and then wanting to retell it. And then the craft is how you retell that, how you package that and make it concise. Because one of the most important things that I think you can do when you're wanting to tell a story or capture a moment is look at the context. It's hard to see something when you're in it, you know, to have 1,000-foot view on a moment when you're in it. And you might have that very human doubt of, well, is this interesting? You know, especially if it might not be to you, but it may be to somebody else. And over the years, I've got really interested in the idea that if you look back through history that we get and the stories that we get are about these very renowned and powerful figures. You can study Alexander the Great or King Tut or British royalty or Genghis Khan or all these people who have had undeniably huge marks on the world, but they were surrounded by a cast of characters that made all of that happen, right? So with all that in mind, I've been really interested if you could travel back in time to, 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, what made people laugh? Just somebody, a baker in ancient Rome. What was the best part of his day? Who did he love? What did he cry about or worry about at night? Or a woman in Victorian England, what did she hope that she could get out of her time on this earth, and what did she achieve, and what did she miss out on,
Yeah, man.
These side characters in life, I never want to, in my mind, put myself above them and tell myself that, well, I'm the main character. I'm the one that this whole story is about, and they're all my support acts, Once you remove the idea that anybody's a support act and that every story in a certain context matters and is interesting, that was the first part of what really shaped my songwriting and my work and my writing in general. Because when I was younger, it was all very, for better or for worse, it was very inward, very self-focused. And not in the sense, how do these stories affect me or what do I garnish from them? It was like, this is how I feel. This is how I'm sad or how I'm happy, or this is what I want, or this is how I would like the world to perceive me through this work. And luckily enough, I kind of worked my way out of that, like I said, just by being in the world and experiencing a bunch of other people. Say I'm working on a new piece, it varies what starts first, the music or the words. A lot of times a word or a phrase will be enough to get me to start thinking. And then when I'm thinking, if I'm just playing a guitar or playing a piano, I just let that help whatever's in there find its way out. Because like I said, the story is already there. The song is already there. You just have to figure out a way to kind of conjure it into existence. And once you do that, it's just a series of unlocking doors in a hallway. Like, what I mean is, if I'm sitting around playing a guitar and I hit something that for whatever reason I like, something in my brain in that moment goes, oh, I like that, I'll just keep playing it until a word comes out of that or a phrase comes out of that. And then once I have a word and a phrase with that music, I'll keep doing that over and over and over again until that next doorway in the hall unlocks. And it leads to, oh, I see, if I say this, then this happens. And first you're just getting it out. I always say that it's better to write first and edit later. Just get everything out. They say the first draft of anything is shit. And so I try not to let it myself worry, is this good, or does this mean anything, or what is this? Because you find that as you go. With Montana, the line that you referenced was the first line that I wrote for that song. A lot of times, there's some people that'll write a verse and then make it a third verse or turn it into a bridge or write a chorus. And a lot of times I write songs, I'll either write the chorus first or I'll start at the first verse and I'll go from there and just write it chapter by chapter by chapter. And I just let the story tell itself, because I have learned in my years of doing this, if it's not a yes, it's a no. So if you're trying to write a story that is real and feels honest and says something, none of it I don't think should ever feel forced. Now that means sometimes it's going to take you an hour to write a song. Sometimes it might take you months or years of revisiting it and trying to figure out, what am I trying to say here? But that's usually where it comes from, is just conjuring something out of the ether with music or a phrase that pops into your mind, and then recognizing, oh, there's something there. Now how do I take the craft of songwriting and chisel something out of that?
But what's interesting to me is, from what you're talking about, the craft is two things. You're doing that with, you're letting one part of you come out, you're grabbing from the ether, the observations, the things that you see. Sometimes a lyric comes naturally, sometimes it comes along with the song. Do you have to work on that dichotomy of those two muscles, if you will?
One of the things that I've noticed, that I've always wanted the lyrics of any of my work to be able to be read and be digested that way, in a way that somebody could just read it or just speak it, and it feels like something. It feels
You're doing
complete.
it, man. You're doing it.
Well, thank you, dude. And then, as putting that into song with the music behind it, I almost think of it, especially with this last album, probably the last couple, what I've always wanted to do is, as I'm writing, I'm seeing things in my head, and then I'm just trying to put that into words, and those are feeding off of each other. The more I see, the more I write. The more I write, the more it makes me see the scene of what's happening. And so then all I'm trying to do with my, albeit somewhat rudimentary understanding of music and theory and all of these things, I'm just trying to score that. I'm just trying to use the music for an added sense of dynamic, or to set the tone of the story. The goal is always that if the music was lost but the words remain, that somebody could just read them, as poetry or prose, and still be able to garnish, what was happening from there, or the emotion from there. But for me, I didn't set out in songwriting. There was part of me as a kid that really wanted to be, Elvis or the Beatles or somebody like that, be this rock star. But it didn't occur to me to write songs until I had gotten a guitar, and then there was no lessons around, so I had to figure out how to play. And I couldn't figure out how to play anybody else's songs. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to write some, just so that I had something that I could play, because I knew I wanted to.
It forced you into that originality, right?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to play guitar and all that. And I couldn't play anybody else's songs, so I just had to make up my own. And they were pretty rudimentary, starting out. And like I said, most of them very self-centered or kind of over-the-top, try hard at being poetic and things like that. But that was, for me, very good, because that's what develops taste. Is when you're listening to a lot of things and you're thinking, well, I want to make something like that. If you have the wherewithal to ask yourself, why do I want to make that? Well, because it makes me feel this way. Okay, so how do I make something that makes me feel this way? And if you just try to recreate somebody else's work, you'll never quite get there. But along the path, what will happen is you'll start playing and you'll start singing, and if you're lucky, you get in this zone where you start feeling the way you feel when you hear your favorite song or when you hear your favorite piece of work, and you just start doing that for yourself. That was the case for me anyways, but luckily some people told me that's good, and it kept me going down the road until you meet people who are better than you. That's a crossroads. Is, do you want to be jealous or do you want to be envious? Do you want to be jealous and say, I should be able to do that, not them? Or do you want to be envious and say, I want to be able to do what they're doing, and I'm going to step outside of myself and ask, how do you do that? I'm sure you've run into it with podcasting or storytelling or just putting any work into the public, is everybody has opinions that you'll run across, and some people are very loud with them, And some people are very quiet with them, and some people are very kind, and some people are very scathing. But I've always thought that good or bad, the only criticism that you should listen to is if somebody knows what they're talking about and wants what's best for you. And so once you find those people, then you can really hone in on, what am I really trying to do here? Do I like what I'm doing because I like it? Or do I like what I'm doing because it's good? And what is the purpose that I'm serving with what I'm making? Am I just trying to convince people that I know something they don't know, and that I'm cool, or that I'm very smart? Or am I trying to serve this period of humanity by capturing something about the people that I have seen, and the places that I have seen, and the things that I have felt? I want to feel, but I don't want to tell somebody what to think or what to feel. For me, anyways, when I come across work like that, it invites me in as a listener.
That's what happened to me when I heard your songs. And I know, dude, when I was watching Theo Von when he's listening. Listen, anyone who appreciates what you're doing, they have the same reaction. They got fucking sunglasses, they just go like this. Because it levels you. Okay, now a question for you. Let's say for Lula, just lean into this. It says, now people do funny things to numb their pain. And Lula drank liquor to forget her name. She used to sleep it off by an old oak tree in a Pontiac she bought with the money from the street. She'd say, I ain't getting younger. I just want to feel good. I ain't going to do what you want because you tell me I should. I'm just going to sit right down and have a smoke. Somebody buy me a beer. Somebody tell me a joke. When I heard that song, dude, first, there was a personal thing that happened to me because my wonderful 12-year-old daughter, her name's Luciana, and her nickname is Lulu. And that one letter, to me, opened up two story arcs. A story arc of this character, Lula, and then my own daughter, Lulu. And I thought to myself, my God, that's someone's daughter. And I thought, you know, man, I had such compassion for her, because if you listen to the song, and I want people to go and listen to the full story of why that section I just read is so important. She comes from a circumstance, and I just felt that sort of desperation and that state of just kind of wanting to be numb. So when you wrote that song, is that during when you were on tour or on the road?
Yeah, it was my first outing on on the realest tour that I had been. And what I mean by that is, like, I had quit my job. I've always worked side jobs over the years. I've done a million things. You know, I've worked in maintenance at a commercial hog factory, and I was working as an air compressor mechanic, and I've worked in SEO and online sales, and I've been a worship pastor and a nonprofit administrator. Just always
You've seen some things.
I've had a lot of different jobs, and finally I had quit to throw all my eggs in the basket of being a touring singer-songwriter, and that had always been my plan. And I got married in 2015, and this was 2017, and so I had booked these tours with an agent I was working with, and they were not good shows. They were like bars and cafes and coffee shops where sometimes you'd play for tips, or the guarantee was maybe $40, things like that. But I knew I had to get out to get the tour history going. And so before this tour that started in July, I was basically going to be out July to the end of November for about 30 days at a time, and then I would have 4 or 5 days off at home to kind of resupply and go back out. And there was no budget for hotels or anything, so I was sleeping in the van with all my gear. And my wife had found out that she was pregnant in April. And I had to kind of have this reckoning, you know, of was I going to do this or not. And I decided I wanted to. because I didn't want to be the type of man that one day looked at my children and told them, you can do whatever you want to. I didn't, because I was scared. And I was scared because of you. And I had to balance that with the thought of, well, is me chasing a dream, you know, further down the road, if that's not realized, is that taking the opportunity from them to be able to do that in their own right. But so I set off on the road, and my first stop was Colorado, where I wrote that song. And yeah, it came from a dream, and I wrote it very, very quickly. And then I started playing it, and it's one of those songs that it has always revealed itself a little bit more to me what it is. And I find that most of the songs that I've written that I would call good, that is one of the things that happens with them, you know, because I recorded that song about a year ago, and then it just came out in May, I think. And I had sat on it since 2017, and I would play it a lot and tell stories about it. And I had never realized that what it is kind of what you were saying, you know, it's somebody looking for a semblance of control in their life. It's somebody's daughter who was born into a situation and circumstance outside of her control that put confines on what she thought her life could be. And so through the period of time that she had on this earth, it was all centered around, how do I get this control back? How do I have a say in what I'm going to do? Meanwhile, trying to escape everything that had set her onto this path. And yeah, that's one of those songs. Obviously, your connection, having a daughter named Lulu and being so close in the name-wise. But I've had a lot of people who have reached out and said, man, I heard this song, and that song is about this person that they know. And sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman. It's always been very nice for me to hear things like that, because I go, okay, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe there is something to these stories that matter.
I'm looking at a line like, she used to sleep it off by an old oak tree. I know people who listen, they can see it. They know that oak tree. Like, and you can see her, and you can see this tree. And then in a Pontiac she bought with the money from the street, like the selection of the type of car, so there's something there. And then without saying it, and you say it several times in the song, stuff she wasn't proud of. You don't humiliate her by going into the gory details of what that looks like, but you give us an idea that she did some stuff to get the money, to get her out of that situation, and now she's here trying to get control over her life in the way she feels like she can do it, which is, I'm not going to do anything you tell me what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit right here. I'm going to have a smoke. Somebody buy me a beer. Someone tell me a joke. That's what I'm going to do. But where do you even get the colors or the imagery for that? How much craft is in that kind of a sentence?
I would say a lot.
Okay.
I think a lot, because it's funny, because the way that you're receiving it, the way that it's written, is just do that backwards, right? You're saying, I'm hearing you say this tree, and I see this tree. Well, it's the same thing, you know, as I just sit and I think, well, where is she? And what is she doing? And why is she doing that? And what is she doing it in? And where did she get that? You know, it's all of these things. You're just answering questions. You're just answering questions. Where is she? Well, she sleeps in her car. Where do you sleep in a car? Well, you probably want some shade, so you're going to go, well, what kind of trees got good shade? Big old oak tree. I've seen a million of those. I don't park cars under them, vans under them, I slept in them. Well, what kind of car is she driving? Well, she's a poor girl in the Midwest.
There you go.
Every poor girl in the Midwest I ever knew drove Pontiac.
That's right.
One of the most prevalent, well-running, cheap cars that you could get. Well, how'd she get the money from it? Well, from working. Well, what does she do? Now there, like you said, you could say in great detail what she does, and there might be some shock value to it. But
That's right.
It's actually the implication is what opens it up and makes it more powerful. And that's something that you see in a lot of mystery writing or horror films.
Hitchcock was brilliant at that.
Like,
it's what you don't
the
see.
monster is scarier when it's in the shadows, when it's implied, when you know something's there, or when, even worse, you're afraid there could be something there. So that's where, as a writer, you learn how to write. And I find that the most important thing that you can do, because you don't just want to be very say and lay it all out for people. All you're doing is painting the pictures. What do you see and why? You're just answering those questions, and for me, a lot of the inspiration that I have from songwriting doesn't really come from a lot of music or songs. I would say, as far as it goes, one of my favorite lyricists is Leonard Cohen. I like the poetic nature of the way that he writes. It's very poetic, and it reads as poetry, but it's not it doesn't imbibe itself too much. But a lot of what influences my lyric writing is authors like Louis L'Amour, the way that he sets a stage, the way that he describes what is happening, or the dialogue, or reading Hemingway and Bukowski, and it's very plain spoken. It's just, this is what is happening. And then I also love, and somebody who influences my lyrics is Mark Twain. The way that he writes in a vernacular. That comes in very handy as a songwriter, where you're trying to make things fit, is writing in a vernacular, and you see a lot of that in hip-hop too, where you can take a word and shape it and bend it in the way that it is spoken in the real world. And then it also makes it more relatable to your listener. You're just answering questions the whole time. And I think that's really the driver of storytelling in any capacity. And I think that's what connects it to making it such an innately human characteristic, is because humans by nature are curious. I think that's the most important thing as a writer that you can have on your side, is always staying curious.
Well, you fill your cup up with those questions. You fill it up with what you see, and now what I'm hearing is you fill it up with reading. Like, so are you a voracious reader?
I've always loved to read.
Okay.
The work that we do, the work that I do, or you do, or anybody has ever done, is all an amalgamation of our lived experience, and we just regurgitate that through our own lens. And so you are what you eat in a lot of ways, and even with this album, To Make You Cry, I wanted to write that like a novel in a way, and then score it like a film, to where each song is a story in and of itself. It's a chapter, it's a character, but then the way that you sequence them on the project to be released, there's a through line through there, and each story is a chapter that takes you on a journey. From the first note to the last note, the story behind it is a lot of my experience of being a touring singer-songwriter, because what I wanted each of these songs to be, and what I wanted the whole project to be, was a recognition, just recognizing these different things and these different emotions and fears and hopes that are brought out by these characters, and then building that out. There's locations mentioned where the first song starts in Nashville, and you're introduced to these characters, and then you just keep moving west. Lula mentions Omaha, the Midwest, and then out to Montana, and this whole idea is that you're going all the way west until that last song, Waves. You're confronted with this ocean of darkness, to where you have to reckon with yourself then at this point.
How necessary is it, as a storyteller for you, or how necessary was it to have those experiences that weren't exactly where you wanted to be, even to work, to survive, to pay the bills, which we all did, but how necessary and how much of a gift were they? It seems like so much of the stories, at least on this album, flow from those moments.
That's a very thoughtful question. It really is. And it's something that I've pondered on myself. And if I spent my time thinking about what I thought I was owed in this lifetime and what I thought it should be, I would have and I would continue to miss the things that are right in front of me. Like you said, a lot of the songs, they were born out of myself being in a situation that at the time I didn't want to be in for whatever reason. Sometimes I thought I was better than that situation. Rarely I thought I was worse than that situation. But I was always there. And there comes a time for me in my life where I just had to accept who I am. Is if I get a photo taken of me and I look at it, I could be disappointed that I don't look like Brad Pitt in a GQ cover shoot. But what a waste if you don't recognize who you are and that is a good thing to be. Or if I'm spending time with my friends and my peers and my colleagues that I'm coming up with, and I'm dreaming that I was at big fancy dinners with somebody else that I was looking up to, and that I wished I was in their group of friends, or thinking that I deserved that, or that was the place that I need to be, I would miss the people that I am with, and the stories that they have, and the lives that they have, and everything that offers me, and everything that I offer them. So you could chalk it up as a youthful ambition, I think, when you're young, that when you're in those shitty jobs or those shitty situations anywhere that you want to be out of, or that you think you deserve to be out of, you can chalk that up as youthful ambition, perhaps. Anymore, I think that coming to terms with who you are will allow you to see those things, and no matter what circumstance you find yourself. Today I'm here speaking with you about stories and songs, and there may come a time in my life where I don't get to focus this much time on things like that anymore. Because of the circumstance I find myself in. There may come a time where I'm back to swinging hammers, or doing this or doing that. And there's always the what do you want out of life. And there's an idea that I have of what I want out of life, but if I think that I'm better than work, then what I'm saying is I think I'm better than somebody else. I think I'm better, that the world owes me something, and it doesn't. And if you spend your time thinking that it does, you will miss what you can get out of it. And I've realized that my calling in life is not to be somebody who takes from what is offered of the world. And I don't want to be. I don't want to be that as an artist, or as a writer, or like I said, or as a father, or a friend, or just somebody that somebody runs into as a grocery store. I would like to, with my work or my day-to-day life, look through more the lens of service. What can I offer in whatever situation that I am in? Whether by noticing something, or by context, or offering insight, or most of all, listening. I think that's what it's boiled down to for me. And the way that I've gotten to that consensus is by, for many years, being places that I didn't want to be, but realizing that I was there and there was nothing that I could do about it, and that the best way to change your circumstance is to accept it and to serve those around you in whatever way that you can. You can look at the world and you can see the way you think things ought to be. But if you can't figure out how to operate in the way they are, you'll never be able to lead them into the direction that you think they ought to go. I had a friend growing up, and his dad used to say, no matter where you go, there you are. And that's about as true as it gets, is just be where you are at the end of it all. That's what I'm hoping for with stories.
I relate to how you see the art, how you see life. I relate to the way you tell stories, and I can see the intention and the dignity with how you do it. That's why I was like, I really want to talk to you for that reason. You know what I'm saying? That's the work. At least that's the work that I was always attracted to. Evan, I'm so glad you took the time to talk to me, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it,
pleasure,
man. You asked a lot of really, really interesting, thoughtful questions, and I had some very gracious things to say about my work. So I appreciate you, taking the time to do this, but taking the time to dig into the pieces that I've put out. That really means a lot to me. It does.